Welcome, everyone. As we've just opened up the session, we're going to allow everybody a chance to get in, get connected to audio. Then we'll start here in just 1 minute. We're going to just take a moment to allow for technology to work. I'd like to welcome you all to our student panel this evening. My name's Mandy Now, and I'm the Executive Director of Health Professions Week, and I'm thrilled to welcome our extraordinary panel here tonight, led by one of the great Tour for Diversity mentors, Dr. Leva Nani. Dr. Nani, I'm just going to turn this over to you because I know you have a great conversation lined up tonight. So I'm going to be hanging out in the back. This is being recorded. If you'd like to keep your videos off so that you do not become part of our recording, that's fine. If you have questions, feel free to drop them into the chat and we'll make sure that those get read. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you.
I appreciate it, Mandy. And again, welcome to everybody. We are here with a lovely panel of students. As the flyer, or as everyone received, it's going to be a topic in a panel about students with disabilities or differently abled. We have a great panel here for you. We're going to go one by one and introduce ourselves, and then we're going to go through and just have a calm discussion. And hopefully during discussion, everyone picks up something that they can take with them or use to help someone else's life. As stated, please use the chat to drop questions. Questions always increases conversations and makes dialogue better. So feel free to dialogue with us and we'll make sure to answer them either back in the chat or live. I'm going to go one by one on my screen because I know it's different from everybody else, and have each student introduce themselves. We're going to say their name, where they are currently, what year, and then just drop one random fact for us. So we're going to start with Maggie.
Hello, everyone. I am Maggie Jones. I am currently a pharmacy student at Philadelphia College of Pharmacy at St. Joseph's University, formerly University of Sciences. I am in my second professional year, and I did my bachelor's of science in cellular neuroscience at Moravian University. Fun fact about me is that I like to ballroom dance.
Excellent. I've never seen anybody mad who knew how to ballroom dance. You must be a very calm and collected person.
I try.
Next person on my screen is going to be Mia. Want to introduce yourself, Mia?
Yeah. Hi, my name's Mia. I am a third-year medical student at California Health Sciences University, College of Osteopathic Medicine. And before that, Mills College and UCLA. Let's see. And I took a non-traditional path. So my studies at UCLA were comparative literature and psychology. A fun fact about me is there's a cat in the room with me that will not leave me alone.
Well, hello to the kitty there. Hopefully even the cat picks up some great knowledge from this panel that we have here today. Going next on my screen, we have Desha. Please introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. So my name is Desha. I'm a fourth-year medical student here at Bastyr, San Diego. So I'm a naturopathic medical student. And I'm excited because I'm in my last year, getting ready to graduate in June 2023. Prior to Bastyr, I earned my master's at UNM. And then prior to that, I earned my bachelor's at Rhode Island College. So yeah, a fun fact about me is I enjoy playing drums.
Ooh, drums. Probably my favorite instrument of all the instruments. You just got to have someone keep the beat. So thank you for being that person in the band every time. All right. And then last but not least on my screen, Stacy. Introduce yourself, Stacy.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Stacy Brown. I am from Atlanta, Georgia, and I was class of 2020 at Northwestern University with Feinberg School of Medicine. I got my master's degree in prosthetics and orthotics, and I recently finished residency with Hanger Clinic in Elmira, New York. And so I was tired of the winters, and so I had to come back to Atlanta. A fun fact about me is I'm obsessed with donuts. Like I get donut socks and pins and notebooks. I love eating them. My favorite one is like a maple bacon donut. So
I love that. I see another heart in the screen. Everyone loves donuts. Are you like a fan of those 1,000-layer donuts or just like your regular solid donut?
it depends. I've tried a 1,000-layer donut and it was okay, but I prefer the solid one compared to the 1,000 layers.
All right. Between now and the end of the panel, I want you to come up with your favorite donuts like shop. Are you a Shipley's person? You know, anyone from Houston, Shipley's is off the chain. Are you a Krispy Kreme's person? Or do you like them from the grocery store? Don't get the answer now. You gotta save it for the end. We gotta drop a tidbit here to keep everyone with us throughout the panel.
Okay.
All right. So everyone has heard everyone's introductions and everyone's heard everyone's various levels of education, all the way from current, second years all the way to residency. And everyone had to go through undergrad. What everyone's probably thinking and assuming, looking at us as a panel is, all right, so where are the disabilities? What are we talking about here today? So we have found through life, and especially in medicine, disabilities or challenges come in different shapes and forms. I think everyone thinks of disability in America, at least. The first thought that pops in your head is, that little shape that's on parking spaces, and everyone thinks, all right, to be disabled, you have to be in a wheelchair and unable to care for yourself. Yet we have several people here in the medical profession or health professions. So I'm gonna go one by one and mix it up. And if you're comfortable sharing with the panel and everyone that's going to watch this panel later, if you can talk about what disability you kind of go through with your life, and how you have learned to master those challenges, and when you notice them: elementary school, middle school, high school, college. It's going to be a pretty random order. So I'm going to start with Disha.
All right. So yeah, thank you so much for bringing that up. It certainly has been a challenge for me. I am legally blind, and I would say that that kind of has been certainly a challenge, especially deciding to go into medical school. So kind of since I was very little, I did have eye problems, and it kind of emerged into where the eye problems, started to manifest, and I started to lose more and more sight. And by the time I graduated high school, many things that I had planned and worked so hard for, such as joining the military, doing all sorts of jobs in government, were completely crossed out. And it was hard for me, to kind of go through and continue. However, I really like school, super nerd, so, or whatever the kids are calling it these days. So I went off to my undergrad, and I decided to go into political science. And in political science, we learned all about certain topics and things like that. And I really like the political arena. And something that really sparked my interest was the healthcare system. So as a blind person at this point in my life, I decided that, I wanted to keep pursuing my education. So I went off to get my master's, and that's when my eyesight really started to take toll. So at that point, I had to get things at that point more digitally. And that was kind of like a transformation, because prior to that, most things were like on paper, the books, that kind of a thing. And for me, I was like, how am I going to do this? So I'd have to bring magnifiers to school. I'd have to do all these things. I'd have to get my books turned into PDF so I could use read aloud. And it was a huge process. And then once I got accustomed and, I accepted this whole transition, things started to go a little more smooth. And then when I ended up getting my master's, I really always wanted to become a doctor throughout my education and my experiences. So I said, there's got to be a way that I can do it. I really want to help people. And for me, it's really all about inclusion. And at some point in society, you realize that, it is about your patients, it's about your colleagues. However, it's also about you and your education. So I'm very thankful to be in a smaller school with a very small cohort, and I'm the only legally blind person that they have. So it has been quite a challenge here to really get to year 4. So I'm very excited. However, it certainly has been a journey, especially in clinic. A lot of times we're using Epic and I can't use that. So there's a lot of things that are not compatible. The love of Epic. So yeah, that's kind of my story about kind of where I'm at now. And hopefully I answered your question as far as that goes. So yeah.
You did. And that was a wonderful story. And I mean, compared to what else is out there, Epic is gold. So don't hate it too much. But I have to ask one question before we move on. I did undergrad in Minnesota. and your accent really reminds me of being an undergrad. So can I maybe
Oh my
ask
God.
where it's from?
I grew up in Rhode Island.
All right, those bouts and boots were so strong. I was like, what's going on here? I feel like I
Oh my
understand that.
God.
All right, we will circle back towards your story. I've definitely been taking some notes and want to highlight a couple of topics. Want to make sure we get to everybody to make sure we start that off with the panel. So Maggie, if you would like to unmute yourself and let us know which challenges you've learned to overcome.
From, I'd say, maybe high school, I knew that I was a little bit different. I had some trouble in school, particularly with reading and comprehending. I was definitely slower than the other students. I had a 504 plan back then, and then I got neuropsychiatric testing. I think, kind of either in my early teens or so, basically, it's a processing disorder, making me slower to process things, particularly when it comes to reading. So as you go through undergrad, and it's heavily, writing and reading courses to get you into knowing how to do those things and reading scientific articles. Certainly hard for me as I needed to use text-to-speech software a lot. And then what was interesting was kind of midway into my undergraduate career, I was diagnosed with ADHD as well. So that kind of added to my difficulties. I've suffered from depression, anxiety, and OCD all of my life. And so those have been kind of factors that have played into my learning disability as well, which further slowed me down. It was interesting to have the ADHD diagnosis kind of later in life. And I had actually kind of like regressed and gotten worse in reading and comprehension as I was much slower, and the assignments were getting a lot harder because as you progress in your program, I was in cellular neuroscience. Then it was surmounting, and then luckily I took a gap year when COVID hit and worked in retail pharmacy, and it really helped my ADHD actually, because I learned a craft that thrived on routine. You know how to fill the prescription, you do the patient interaction, you counsel, and then you go ahead and do the back billing and things like that. And it's just that kind of cyclic nature of it that really helped my ADHD. And now that I'm in my second professional year of pharmacy school, so normally pharmacy students do a 0 to 6 program, meaning you do 2 years of undergrad, and then you do 4 years of the professional degree to get your PharmD. I did the alternate route. I did 4 years to get my bachelor's of science, took a gap year, and now I'm here. And now that I'm in grad school, and the reading again hits you, I have to use these kind of different softwares and have those aids of extended time to help me, particularly with exams that are heavily worded with patient cases. So that's mainly where my learning disability presents an obstacle, is reading and writing. And the OCD and perfectionism doesn't help because, it's all in your head, and then, your mind likes to trick you with saying, well, it's not good enough, so you can't put it out on paper, even though your thoughts are there. So that's kind of my journey in a nutshell.
Such an interesting journey. I think that's the first time everyone always jokes that anybody with ADHD needs a pharmacy solution. Most people are talking about taking a drug, not working in the pharmacy. So I actually find that to be quite interesting and a different route to solve a different disability, I think. So we will definitely put a pin in that and come back to some of the things that you discussed. Stacy, if you wouldn't mind unmuting and telling us a little about your journey.
Yeah, so I was born with congenital flexion contractures of both of my elbows. So I can't extend my arms all the way. I've had a bone lengthening surgery on each arm to gain extension. I've had a cubital tunnel release on each arm because I was getting like numbing and pain. And so it's always been an issue, and it's always impacted me since birth, but I didn't get accommodations for it until my junior year of high school. Just not knowing what accommodations were available, not knowing if those things were accessible to me. And I think growing up, I was taught just to push through, and it was like this narrative that someone out there has it worse. And so it was just put into me that I have to just like push through it and push past it. And being in a junior in high school, it was like, you mean I could have extra time on my test? You mean I could have like a break, or I can type my notes instead of having to write them, or I can come after class and meet with my teachers separately instead of like trying to rush and be in pain with trying to write everything and all of that. And my disability has definitely impacted just being in school, getting a master's in prosthetics and orthotics. You're working with people who maybe haven't walked in 6 months, and so you're helping them stand up, and so you're holding a lot of their weight. You're dealing with plaster, and you're doing a lot of modifications in lab and fabrication, and you're holding a requirement of our job is being able to carry or hold 50 pounds, which is extremely difficult for me to do. So it was just this process of being in school and then getting into residency and knowing that my experience as a resident was going to be different simply because of my disability, and making sure that I communicated that to my professors at the time before even getting into school, and communicated that during interviews before I started residency. It's been a struggle. I'm very hard on myself. So I am learning how to give myself that grace. And that I don't, and also unlearning that I don't have to suffer, and that suffering isn't this badge of honor that I have to wear. I had a manager who was like, you could be having a hard time and I wouldn't even know. And I'm like, well, but like, I want you to know, and I want to be able to communicate that. But because I've pushed through for so long, and that was what I'm used to doing, it's hard for me to ask for help, and it's hard for other people to notice when I need help as well.
You hit some great points that we're definitely come back to. I definitely wrote down the note that somebody has it worse, but
Yeah.
is that good for me? Like, why is that good for them too? Why do people have to have it worse? So that's an interesting topic. And Mia, if you would like to go ahead and tell us your story.
Hi. It was really kind of intimidating hearing everybody's story, and I think all of them had elements that I really connected with. Definitely felt somebody has it worse. Yeah, I started receiving accommodations when I was in 5th grade. I had an instructor who just saw that there was something different about the way I was taking in information. And I was kind of your textbook kid with ADHD, couldn't sit still, but a little different as well. I had hyperfixations, but they were more compulsive than anything else. She recommended that I take my exams in a separate area of the classroom. And I went from being a failing student to a high achieving student, below grade level in reading and mathematics, to at and beyond, because I just couldn't fit into the system as it was supposed to be applied. And it took a really long time to unlearn. I don't even know if I have unlearned it, that just because the way that I retain information and the way that I process it, and even sometimes demonstrate my proficiency, is different from the way that the majority of people do doesn't mean that my knowledge is deficient or that my ability to help other people is deficient. It just means that sitting and reading long vignettes, clinical vignettes about patient presentations on a computer in a timed fashion does not allow me to best reflect what I have learned and what I can apply. And I have little components here and there that kind of have made some of my training uncomfortable. But ultimately, I think I was really lucky because I did receive accommodations early in life, and not everybody has that teacher, Miss Murphy, who sees that like you missed a bunch of third grade and fourth because you were out sick and something just didn't quite come back, and pulled them through. You know, we don't all have a Miss Murphy. And because of that early documentation, it's been exceedingly, I wouldn't say easy, but more accessible to me to receive accommodations in high school, in college. It was really streamlined and very efficient. I'd say that entering the health professions, ironically, has been the most challenging aspect of receiving appropriate assistance. Yeah.
I really like your story. Shout out to Miss Murphy and all the Miss Murphys out there. They are what we all need to recognize something in ourselves. We're about halfway through the panel, so we're going to keep going into some in-depth things. So listening to everyone's story, I noticed that Maggie and Mia have what we would call neuroprocessing disabilities. You know, either focusing tends to be a challenge, absorbing information tends to be a challenge. And like you stated, Mia, you know, long vignettes sitting down in one place, is that really indicative of knowledge? So for anyone out there that's watching this that thinks they have something similar, what would you guys recommend as the first steps towards either getting testing or getting that identified? And either one can go and the other one follow right after.
So I guess I'll go first. My mom is a nurse practitioner. She recently retired. So she was well-versed in the medical field and knew many people, which I'm very fortunate for. And we had the means to get me tested. Granted, you know, as a child, I had seen like a therapist before, but that was just behavioral things that carried into my elementary school. But I think what really helped and actually drove how I got my accommodations and what accommodations I got was the neuropsychiatric testing. And the benefit from that was, even when I did it, I might have been like 12 or 13, maybe even younger, is that like your cognition, like they say, your IQ doesn't really change over time. Like once you do this testing, I don't have to like repeat it. So I've used that documentation as well as my documentation from undergrad to help create my accommodations that I currently have. But then also, I had my battle with mental health in high school, majorly in high school, and then some of it carried into college. And so I was in inpatient mental health care, and I did a rehab program, and I met a fantastic psychiatrist there. And I've kept him ever since. And, you know, I travel across state lines to keep up with that. And I think having a healthcare provider in general that you have trust in, that you feel that isn't kind of isn't over prescribing, you understand what you're taking, why you're taking it, to find that is not easy. It's not easy to find any kind of mental health specialist these days. There's like so many out there, but there's like not enough. It's quality over quantity. So finding the healthcare provider that one, that you feel connected with, but also two, having extensive experience and knowledge in the field, and something that was new, I guess, back then, I guess within the past decade, is pharmacogenomics. So what helped guide my medication regimen, unfortunately, I learned it a little bit later in my life, so I had to go through testing medications to regulate, my depression, anxiety, and ADHD. I had to go through some of those side effects. But once we found out about pharmacogenomics and that testing that you just do, it's kind of like 23andMe. You swab your mouth, send in that sample, and my psychiatrist was able to use those results. It tells you what psychiatric medications, including, ADHD medications, that would work best for me, that would have the least amount of side effects. Because the side effects that I was experiencing while testing some of these drugs really impacted my school life. Physically, I had to actually take breaks out of school, things like that, just because of side effects. I lost some of my vision. I could not see up close, which was actually kind of scary for me because I was so young. That was a side effect. So after having that pharmacogenomic testing, really guided my treatment and therapy, and made it so much easier and less stressful on the person taking it to not have so many side effects. And then also a wonderful support team at school. So kind of like Mia said, she had Mrs. Murphy. I had actually quite a few proponents in my corner to help me. And those are the people that you can, in the most stressful times in your academic life, because there are those times where you're like, I got this test, or I have so much work and I don't know how to organize it, because, our ADHD minds are trying to rattle up a round of kittens or puppies. It's like you only have two hands, but you got 10 puppies to round up. That's how the ADHD mind works. So to have a Mrs. Murphy in your corner, or those academic specialists, is really, really beneficial throughout both undergrad and graduate school.
Before you jump in, Mia, I just want to highlight two things for the panel and everyone out there, especially those who may be listening and not paying attention, we're on mute. I like to point out what I like to call pearls. Everyone on here watching us, and even people on the panel, want to go into the health professional field in some way, shape, or form. And I heard two great things from Maggie's story. One, a great health professional person can be life-changing. And you can know that when people will travel across state lines to see you and to keep you. So that's what I think everyone should strive out there to be someone that is there for their patients, helps them through things, and remains there for their patient. Two, which will probably be a foundational fact throughout this panel, nothing cookie cutter always works, or you don't always have to use the cookie cutter model. Pharmacogenomics is very, in my opinion, cutting edge. And to know which medications work well for which people and shifting towards that is great. So if you're helping someone in your health profession field and they say, this isn't working for me, the answer isn't, well, get used to it. That's the #1 treatment, or that's the preferred medication or preferred orthotic at this point. It's okay to shift and go to plan B or C. So hopefully everyone caught those 2 points. Mia.
Thank you. I just wanted to jump on to what Maggie said about neuropsychiatric testing. If you're struggling in school or socially, it can help. If you have chronic pain, it can help. If you have any sort of challenge interfacing with academics, or just life, life's hard, but specifically because we're talking about health professions education, I would urge you to seek out neuropsychiatric testing as soon as possible. Just because the earlier you have documentation, the easier things might be for you moving forward. And neuropsychiatric testing, we talk about it like it's very accessible. It isn't. It's very expensive. it can cost thousands of dollars. And there's no assurance when you're doing it that they will see what you experience. So my best advice would be to find out who your insurance provider is, see what their process is for securing it, because even Medi-Cal has a pathway to neuropsychiatric testing. And a lot of local universities will do it, having their PhD candidates do the testing for a reduced fee. So ask about that. Ask about super billing, because sometimes you can do something that your insurance doesn't cover and then make a case for why they should cover it and submit the bill after the fact, and they'll reimburse you. And then just if you are going to get tested, go in with a scientific spirit. Don't go in hoping for an outcome. I've known people who have had that experience and they were devastated when they received news that didn't quite align with their self-perception. Go in as a scientist and treat it like anything else, that you just be interested in exploring what the results yield. Don't let it define you. This is just insight.
I like that, especially the tips about how to navigate the insurance field. America's a great country. We have a pretty decent healthcare system, but the one thing that it sucks about our healthcare system, it is definitely financially aligned. As all of us know, working in healthcare and myself working in it, it is great because if you have money, access is right there. You can find anything about any time, but if you don't, the barriers continue to come up and up and up. So look for those students, look for those grad schools, talk to your insurance ahead of time, and don't be afraid to go back and bill to them again. I love those 2 points. To Stacy and Disha, both of your challenges or disabilities are on the physical side and not necessarily quote unquote in the mind. Going back to the topic we touched on earlier about cookie cutter, I think a lot of times when people think about, oh, here how we can provide accommodations for anyone with disabilities from the school standpoint is extra time and more time in class and extra breaks. But if your disability is, I can't see, does more time help? If your disability is, I can't literally reach over here and grab this or pick this up, or I can't write for an extended period of time, or maybe this chair and desk is too wide, so I can't extend or bend my elbow to get it. How did you guys approach coming to the school or where you were getting educated and say, hey, this is actually what I need, not your cookie cutter approach? And I see
I'll go first if that's okay. Yeah.
Yep, you're unmuted, you go first.
All right, so yeah, I can definitely speak about that because at first when I entered medical school, I felt like, because I don't use a white cane, once I kind of learn my surroundings, I kind of work in those. So like, I'll know where certain things are. And like, as far as like my brain is, I'm very mathematical. So I'll know how far something is. So if something moves something, I'll probably trip over it or that kind of a thing. So for me, I think part of the eye opener was when I took gross anatomy. I could not be tested like other people, although initially I was, because I really wanted to try to be like other people, especially in medical school. And I just couldn't do it. So that was a severe letdown for me. So then I had to go ahead and start thinking about, if I want to become a doctor, what does this look like for me? How am I going to do it? I literally have spent my entire academic career here advocating for myself. I am still advocating for myself. There's times I get very tired. I'm exhausted. People sometimes have stepped in from the higher ups and they want to help. However, not all blind people are the same. So it's kind of that situation where you're kind of convincing people, because if you see me, you probably wouldn't think that I'm blind. You'd probably think I'm normal. So part of the problem that I typically have is people forget that I can't see well. Alongside of kind of awkward, like I said hello to you in the parking lot and you didn't wave back to me kind of situations that go on frequently. You kind of get like situations where, you know, your grade's on the line. You have to take this exam. Extra time is great. I do get extra time. However, that only goes so far. because sometimes exams are quite different for me. So an example is like if I take an exam where I have to view something, what does that mean for me opposed to someone who is sighted? And I've had to do all sorts of like new things, and I'm kind of the one that has had to come up with most of those. And then there's been times where the administration has come up with things, and just to be nice, I've been like, oh yeah, that could work, but I know it will never work for me. And I think that I had to stop doing that because I just like was always in fear of like having to leave the program, or I wouldn't be up to par with the other medical students because I can't see as good. So for me, I was always like felt like I was on the radar. So now that I'm year 4, I'm still advocating, I'm still going strong. It's tough because you have to be careful whose toes you step on, and you have to be respectful. And I have to also keep in mind that I'm training to be a primary care doctor. So at some point, it's not going to be about me. It's going to be about my patients. So right now it's, you know, kind of like a little bit of both because I am paying for the education and that kind of thing. But yeah, it's kind of like an interesting like dance that we have going on here at my current institution. And yeah, so that's kind of how it is for me. And yes, epic. It really is epic. I will tell you that. So yeah.
I love hearing your story. That fight for yourself. Anyone watching, you may have to fight for different things, whether disability, you know, or anything else in your life. The one thing that everyone I know who is a fighter always says is it's tiring. So, you know, we hear you, we see you. Hopefully you continue to keep that energy up, because I know there's going to be a patient in the future who's going to have you as a primary care doc, and be very, very, very happy that you continue to put out that fight.
Thank you.
Stacy.
I agree with you 100%. It's exhausting. I think with my experience, it's being frustrated that I have to even advocate for myself in the first place. And a lot of times it's, I didn't know how to ask for what I needed, and I didn't really know what I needed. I feel like I had a discussion with someone before starting residency that usually the solution, the responsibility of the solution is usually put on the person who has a disability. And I just think that is extremely frustrating. And within my profession, when I talk about my disability that is very specific to me, I think it becomes where we just group all physical disabilities. There are a variety of people within our profession who are amputees or do have congenital amputations, and they have to have certain accommodations. And it's like, you can't group all of us. You can't group all the below knee. You can't group all the above knee. Like everyone can have similar experiences, but approach them differently. I think another thing for me, there were a lot of hypothetical accommodations where it was, you know, maybe we could build a platform for you. Maybe we can, you know, create this for you to use. That never happened. But it's like, oh, it's a good idea in the beginning, but it never actually came into fruition. So I was never able to try it. And it is a process where it's frustrating because I'm like, I went through grad school, I went through residency, and I still don't know how to accommodate myself to the patients. I still don't know how to serve these patients and to help them without sacrificing myself and my body. So it's been a process. It's still ongoing. And also I'm figuring out something new every day in terms of what can be an issue. So it's like you might find a solution here, but then the next day you're like, wait a second, this is also something else that can be done easier. And so it's just like, how can I do my job in the most efficient way? And what does that look like? But I think it should be a collaborative approach instead of just being our only response on our responsibility to figure everything out.
I think you're correct. Everyone who works in the DEI sphere, those 3 letters are very popular right now. Diversity, equity, inclusion. And inclusion includes those who are differently abled. A lot of people who do that hard work, you hear a lot of that same retort you just hit on. Why are those who are oppressed or those who are struggling have to come up with a solution for the oppression and the struggling? It's like, so help me. So I like that thought process of a collaborative effort, because if you don't have help from that other side, though, again, you fight and you fight and you fight, and you will just tire yourself out. So there are a lot of people watching this, and they heard great things now. They said, okay, I'm gonna get the testing early. Okay, I'm gonna fight my insurance early. Okay, I found a great provider. Okay, I know how to do these things on a daily basis, and I have my routine down. But now I need to apply to school. Now I want to be that doctor or that pharmacist or that person working in the amputee sphere. So when applying to a college or a school, what are some things you guys recommend people look for? Do you look for an office or a person? Do you look for people who go there and have gotten through? What are things that you think people should look for? And it's free ball, so anyone goes, and it's okay. We can get to all of you guys.
I'll go first. So for my undergraduate search, I immediately ruled out large universities. Anywhere I would sit in a lecture hall and get lost and be a number. And so I chose it was a college at the time. Now it's expanded to a university, but it's still a small university. And so I was a big fish in a small pond, which I loved because all my professors knew me by name. They knew my story, and I had multiple Mrs. Murphys where I went. I went to Moravian University, and they also had an office of student accommodations, but they also had a separate office for academic success, which was a big selling point for me because I guess some people assume that they're together. If you have accommodations, then you're succeeding. That's not the case. The accommodations, so the Accessibility Services Center helped me get the ADA, protected me under ADA laws, and did the paperwork for me to make sure I was succeeding. And then they also had a specialist where I could meet with them to help organize me with my ADHD, because once you start getting a lot of college work in, you're like, oh, well, I have 5 classes. I don't know how to manage all these things. And then academic success, that office helps you with other strategies for studying, to really be on top of all your assignments and things like that. But the small school was a big thing for me because that way I could know my professors, and I speak to them to this day. I know their kids. They've had me over for dinner. It's that kind of connection that I felt that I needed, and I would recommend it to people with a disability, because having a connection, having somebody in your corner, just, as all the other panelists have said, it gets exhausting to advocate for yourself. So if you have somebody who gets to know you really well, kind of like, a second guardian, it really takes a lot of the burden off of you, because I had come into classes some days where I was really struggling, and they could tell on my face. So they pulled me aside. They said, let's figure out what's going on. Let's see how we can work around it. And then they helped me make a plan of action, or they went on my behalf to help and advocate. So that was really nice. I will say in graduate school, it depends on the place. I guess, yeah, it really is the place. If they don't have as strong of an academic support system, you want to really investigate that. How much can I get away from, maybe not leaning so much on academic support, or do I really want somebody who's well-versed in ADA laws and who can really help me? So that really came into play in my decision making. And then lastly, I know I've been going on for a while, the curriculum. I am in the only pharmacy school in the nation that does a modular curriculum. So it's similar to med school, meaning I only take 1 to 2 courses at a time, instead of and I finish a disease state within 4 to 7 weeks. So in undergrad, I found taking 4 to 5 classes for a whole semester quite overwhelming. So focusing only on one thing. So I've just done cardio, so all about the heart. I learned that in about 4 weeks, and that's all I had to worry about. So that's where I chose the curriculum as well.
I love that. Went to a liberal arts college myself, so I definitely understand the big fish, small pond analogy. And having a school with 2 offices, that's actually a great look. I hopefully someone took some notes on that. Anyone like to go next? Mia, go ahead.
I think that a lot of what Maggie said also applied to my situation. But I went to UCLA. It's a big school. I mean, it's like the smallest UC campus with the highest population or so. I don't know. There's a lot of people, right? But they had an office for students with disabilities. And they had advocates in that office who were assigned to students. And I have not had that experience at any other institution that I've attended. If you plan on applying to or attending medical school in this country, at least, you will not have access to an advocate. You need to bring your own advocate. You got to find somebody through a support group, or sometimes there are like learning aids. But what you really don't need that. You need somebody who wields some form of authority, who is going to be on your side, be that an ADA lawyer or a physician, because those are the 2 that really tend to go furthest in academic institutions to make sure that your boundaries are held and your rights are upheld. Because otherwise it does all fall to you all the time. And even with having that, it all comes back on you. So you do need to make sure that you go in with the appropriate support. And I don't know if people are allowed to email us or how this works, but you need help, like reach out, because I've tried so many avenues. And we really, really only go as far as we lift each other. And I only learned the things I did from asking other students with disabilities that I met in the office at UCLA. So if you are going to college and you're going to pursue a health profession, I don't know how all of them work, but at least this like indoctrinated kind of channel is, it's not ready to change and it needs to. So if you're coming, be ready to disrupt it.
I think that is very true. Medicine and health professionals are very helpful, but education, why don't you say stagnant? Change is very hard in this realm. So becoming more accommodating may not be what some people want to do, because they just want to, get people in, graduate them, get them out. So you got to force them to pay attention to the Americans with Disability Act and pay attention to what they're doing, and get through everything. So you may need some fighters with you to fight for you.
And be really nice to your peers and to the people who do see you. Like, be kind. Not everybody is always going to be against you. They just might be ignorant. It happens. It's correctable. And you never know what somebody else is going through. Like, I'm very vocal about my accommodations and why I receive them, but there are members of my class who receive accommodations that nobody knows about because they're not comfortable with that. And that's okay, but you never know. You just never know. Like you were saying earlier about physical disability, when I get really anxious, I have Raynaud's. So my feet will go numb, my hands will go numb. I'm very vocal about that too, but it's not a disability per se until you need to manipulate someone's spine and you're being watched. And then how you perform is going to determine whether or not you get to do it when you're not like, $120,000 in debt and having somebody grade you, because my hands don't get nervous when I'm treating my friends. Anyways, yeah, so just be nice. And because you could make friends with people who have suggestions that you don't know about yet. Yeah.
I like that. I always like to say ignorance is acceptable, persistent ignorance is not. So, if you don't know something, obviously you don't know it. But when you get approached with it and educate on it, you can't then go and say, I still don't care. That's when I have a little bit of problems. Stacey, I see you unmuted. Do you have something?
So to be honest, there was no like way that I went about applying to OMP school. There are only so many programs. So it was just like I'm applying to as many as I possibly can in hopes that I can get into at least one of them. I think once I started school, it was allowing myself to be vulnerable to then allow people to show up for me. And that was really hard for me to do. I had a professor, Dr. Duncan, he set me down and he's like, we have accommodations, you can use them. And just him being aware of certain stigmas that are associated with receiving accommodations, or just being aware of the fact that in my mind, I wanted to go into this being able to do everything like everyone else, and I can't. And that is okay. And learning to accept that for myself. There were definitely a lot of times I cried in class. I cried in front of my classmates, in front of my professors. But then again, that created an opportunity for someone to show up for me and to be there for me and to just give me advice on how I can approach things on a day-to-day, just within school. So I think vulnerability is a big thing. Sometimes it can be scary to do that, but I think that also opens doors and opens opportunities for people to show up for you. And also trusting that someone is going to show up for you and there is someone that's going to be in your corner if you allow it.
Excellent. And there was a question in the chat, and I saw Maggie has replied. The question was, does anyone know of any epileptic doctor groups or doctor support groups, whether on social media or anything else like that? Mia, if you know them, you can say it vocally or feel free to drop in the chat as well.
I don't, but give me a second and excuse my texting and I will see what I can do for you.
No problem. And as she texts, I highly recommend. I know social media can have its drawbacks to our societal impacts, but one of the things that it's really good at is connecting people. I mean, I think there's a Facebook group for just about everything. So I would not be surprised if that cannot be found as well. And kind of going out there, searching for them. Maybe we can help with that or work with our health professions partners to help find that for you as well. But we got somebody on it to the right on my screen, typing and texting, looking for it. So we're going to help you. I'm going to read this question out loud. It's from Gabby. She said that everyone here is phenomenal and thank you for sharing. But basically, they have spinal stenosis and are now a part-time wheelchair user, but still have a lot of pain if I overwork the body. I'm worried about residency and even before then getting direct patient care hours. I know I can work part-time, but I don't want admissions to see me as lazy or as not hard enough worker, but I'm unsure if I can do full-time successfully. I don't know if I explained well, but any comment or advice would be welcome. So again, we're talking about someone here who is now using a wheelchair and needs to take a little more time through their schooling and is worried about being perceived a certain way. If anyone would like to jump in and provide some feedback or comments, feel free.
I can definitely relate to that. I felt that way applying into residency where I thought I had all of these like things going against me. Like I am a Black woman in a predominantly white male profession. I have this physical disability. I have a physical disability that people can't see right away until like maybe I go tie my shoe and then they're able to notice. And so having to go into this with all of this fear that who I am and what I identify as wasn't going to be enough. And it took time. I'm still working on building that confidence within myself, to know that regardless, I have something of value and something to offer. And I think that goes back to having someone in your corner as well to have these conversations with, to have these conversations with your concerns about. I had mentors that I talked to, I had professors that I talked to where I was like, hey, this is a concern of mine. what can be done and how can I advocate for myself? Because I think it's very difficult knowing how to protect yourself in these situations, because you could be getting discriminated against, but there's not necessarily this, like, it might not be very blatant, or you might not feel comfortable expressing that to someone because you're a resident and you're at the bottom, you're at a low level there coming into it. But I think the biggest thing is knowing that who you are is enough, and that if you try something and it doesn't work out, that is okay. That you don't have to push yourself to be able to meet these standards and these expectations of other people, and being okay with being uncomfortable in the sense of needing to say, I need to step back. I need to go part-time. I need to take a pause, and taking a break. I am on a break right now and it feels great. but taking a break is not a reflection of your work ethic. It's not a reflection of what you can do. And so just listening to your body is something that I had a really hard time doing, knowing when you need to take a break and actually taking them. In my schedule, I talked to HR and everything, and I had 15-minute breaks implemented into my schedule. They were blocked up in between patients. Did I ever take them? No. But then again, it was just in the back of my mind, oh, I'm not going to get work done, or people are going to think that I'm lazy, or that I'm not doing a good job, or that I'm not contributing to the office. And those things aren't true. So Gabby, I wish you the best of luck with that process.
Amazing. Anyone else would like to jump in? Mia, I see a hand raised.
I have a friend who attends medical school right now, and in the same year as me, a third year. So starting out on rotations, and they have ankylosing spondylitis. So their spine is fusing. It's a autoimmune condition, and they're able to ambulate fine. That being said, they experience a lot of pain and fatigue and side effects from medications, but they're loving rotations. And the only time that they seemed like remotely kind of taken aback, it was very discouraging for them. But they ended up talking to the resident that was overseeing them about the experience and about how much they were enjoying. It was actually orthopedics, the experience, and like how upsetting it was to think maybe their body would be a limiting factor because of their pain and fatigue. I think that you can do what you want to do. It just might look different. And if you can get yourself and your team in a place where you know what it needs to look like, and you have like a plan A, B, C, and maybe D for the different routes you might need to take, you just go and do it. Because if COVID's taught us anything, it's that people are adaptable, and that we can have Zoom conferences, and that we can do things a little bit different. So people can pivot. You can do this.
I completely agree. There's a great question in the chat, but as a moderator, I have to double check something. And you can type in the chat or unmute yourself, Mandy. Can we go past the 6 o'clock Central hour, or are we locked into the 1 hour?
I am here as long as you guys want to continue on the conversation. All
right. We're going to push a little bit past 6. And I would like Disha to answer this question, because I think it's a great one that was put in the chat. It's by Shima. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. They're thankful for sharing the stories, but they want to know, how do we market ourselves in competitive fields, especially when applying to residency? I don't want to put too much strain on my body, but I want to have the best residency experience. I don't want clinics to overlook me just because another resident may not need accommodations like I will. Any thoughts about that? Anything you'd like to infuse into this person right now?
Definitely. I have to say that, when I'm thinking about like even residencies or even applying into programs, something that I personally felt like I had to be extremely competitive because of my disability. So for me, I kind of like worked myself like up the ranks and then decided like, okay, I'm prepared to do medical school now. Medical school is very, very intense. So if you go into medical school, you have to have the mindset that it's hard. I mean, it's hard for sighted people. It's hard for, physically able people. It's hard for anybody who goes in. It's meant to be hard. So keep that in mind. When I applied, I think when I look back, there could have been things I could have done a little better. I certainly would suggest that if you have a good story and if you know your work ethic and you're willing to work hard and you're honest with yourself, that should count for something, and you should go ahead and you should give it your all. There will always be people in whatever field you go into that you will look at and you'll say they're so good at this or they're so good at that. And I think you have to just kind of take that in. And it's not that you want to compare yourself. However, maybe you find out that you're really good at something you never thought you were. I mean, that happened to me. I thought I was going to be better at something else in medicine, and I ended up being better at, something else completely different than what I thought. So it's important because as you're building all of these things up, it's a learning experience. And I would say don't compare yourself to someone else, even though that can become quite difficult when you are in a cohort and you know your peers and they get to know you and you know your professors and you really want residency. So I look at what you're interested in. I'd look at what you've gotten good at, and I'd use all of your experience, all of your, education, and I would put everything together and create a really good package in that regard. So yeah.
And to everyone out there, I was one of the co-chief residents in my residency program. A small secret, everybody needs some level of accommodation, right? Like if you're really tall, you need to like have taller doorways, right? People, if you're on the shorter end, you do need those stepping stools when you're working in the OR. If you're left-handed predominantly, you do need the circulator on this side handing you instruments and not on the right side. So everyone needs a little bit of something. And I don't think any office will ever call it lazy if you're advocating for yourself and what you need. What offices tend to not want is they don't want to take people in and then not be able to put them out as physicians or pharmacists or anything in their field. So they will make whatever accommodations necessary to make sure you graduate. Just make sure when you come in, you are aware to discuss those accommodations. And knowing it early is even better. And like Disha just said, if you're great on paper, everyone knows if you've done that hard work, just because you need one or two things during residency does not make you a bad candidate. You were great.
I also want to add something really quick for Shima. I think something that was very important for me when applying for residency was setting expectations with whoever I was interviewing with. Letting them know that like, hey, my experience as your resident is going to be different than the residents you've had before. And so even asking them like, what are your expectations of me as a resident to make sure that I can meet those expectations. I think sometimes we forget when we're interviewing that like we're interviewing them as well. And we also have to make sure that they are a good fit for us. In this process, you are still a priority, your body is still a priority, and your needs are still a priority. So just knowing that ahead of time and being okay with communicating that. I was a little nervous about it at first because it felt a little forward. It felt a little like, this is who I am. If you can't give me this, then it's not going to work. But I think it's better to do that ahead of time than to get into residency and then realize that they're not able to meet your needs.
Agreed. So what we're going to do to wrap this up is go round robin and have everyone put out their last feelers and last thoughts. We talked about it a lot earlier. Somebody may have it worse off than you, but that's not how we want to leave the world. I think we should leave the world better for whoever's coming after us. So if everyone, please share your final thoughts and then share how you hopefully would like to in the future change using your specialty, change something for somebody else, whether you want to develop that new ADHD medication, whether you want to develop that new orthotic to help with extension purposes. How are you guys anticipating leaving your stamp on the world? Besides this panel, which has been great and will be like archived forever. So that's one stamp, but you guys can have multiple stamps. Let's start with Maggie again.
All right. So to kind of address, I guess, Shima and Gabby and anybody else who has kind of the doubt in their mind that their disability might, even though you might seem other, or you think you might be weak or lazy, I think having a disability, either mental or physical or any other kind of disability, is highly marketable. We are in a highly diverse country that is gearing towards many workplaces. For the internships that I've gotten, even at Hospital University of Pennsylvania, which is a world-renowned, world-class facility, everyone is looking for diverse applicants. So having a disability, which they actually have a statement now for veterans and those with disabilities, they can't reject you. They can't overlook your application just because you have a disability. It's illegal based on ADA regulations. So just know that there's power in having a disability, and as long as you own it, and as long as you're open about it and disclose it, and you take it on with your whole heart, you're going to succeed in life, whether it takes you 10 years or it takes you, standard amount of time, you're going to get there. Let's see, what else am I forgetting? What else were we asking, Dr. Anani?
How you want to leave your mark on the world or change something for the community?
Yeah, so since I did my BS in cellular neuroscience, I would like to do psychiatric or neurologic pharmacy. So that requires a residency, and I'm hoping to be the type of clinician that is that have made me succeed to where I am today, and be the clinician that wholeheartedly listens to patients and can provide them excellent care. And then lastly, I know we're having donut recommendations, but the best donut that I've ever had, and I'm not a big donut eater either, is at Voodoo Donuts. They have their original location, I think, is in like Oklahoma or something like that, but they have one in Austin, Texas. Best donut I've ever had. One of them was a maple bacon.
Gauntlet has been thrown. We will end with Stacy to drop the official donut recommendation, but I'm loving this. This will be our unofficial third question. Drop your donuts as well. So we will go with Mia next. Whatever parting shots you'd like to give, how you want to change the world. And if you have one, apparently, your donut of choice.
Okay. I don't know what area of medicine I want to go into yet. But I entered this field because I wanted to be able to intercept people in times when they needed something that they didn't have access to, and to be able to provide that access. So whether that be health education or surgery or a medication or long-term management, I just wanted to be able to provide that service. Medical education has to change. It super has to change. It's abusive, and it's exclusive and difficult to access, and difficult to navigate. And we can fix it from within, but you've got to know what you want to change and why you want to change it, and have people who will keep you accountable. So, be honest with people, and make sure you're honest with yourself, and do the work. And the only way out is through. And that's all I got, except for donuts. Huge fan of an old fashioned, just slathered with maple. Just like, I want it cement dense. Like I want to not be able to swallow as I am eating it. That's the ideal donut. I don't know if that's got like a million layers, or I don't know, but like a brick.
I love it. And one of the things I did not expect, this is why I love people with different tastes, the love so far for the maple donut is very, very high. I thought Americans were all about glaze, but the maple is clearly winning our panel as of this moment. like, I want to see this trend continues. Disha, you are up next.
So the trend, unfortunately, is not going to continue because I do not eat donuts. So I'm so sorry, Stacey. I have epically failed at this. But anyway, I really enjoy hearing about everyone's enthusiasm for donuts. It's been quite revitalizing. So yeah, as far as tips that I can fathom up for the watchers in this panel is that, it's 2022. So in my opinion, moving forward, it's kind of one of those things where disability, just like most things these days, really have to be looked at in a different way, a different perspective. And in my particular situation, I've become a little irritated that so many sighted people make all these decisions for people with low vision and who are blind of all different levels. That's been difficult for me. So basically they put like, oh, you can't do this, you can't do this. And the reality is if you have these things, you're kind of excluded. So I would say that, it really is, disability doesn't discriminate, people do. I say that all the time. It's like my favorite thing to say because I feel like it is so true. And everyone has a disability, really, if you really think about it. Even if you wear glasses, you have a disability because without them, you can't function. And disability comes in so many shapes and forms. So I would certainly like to see many, many more pioneers. I certainly don't want to graduate and leave knowing that I would be the last one. I certainly want more people, all backgrounds, all disabilities to come into, especially the field of naturopathic medicine. I certainly believe that we need more primary care doctors. We need more people to be able to connect to our patients. And I really want to see that as a change, certainly. So, yeah.
I love that. And by default, seeing you're repping Rhode Island, that's Maple. So that's a third Maple person. So Maple is still
okay.
still winning. All right. Stacey, if you would like to wrap us up here with whatever final parting shots you have, how you'd like to change, improve things moving behind you, and the official grand boobah of donuts.
I appreciate you all for participating in this. I think for me, it's just throughout life and going through school and applying through residency, I thought that my disability set me behind. And so just really knowing that being a Black woman with a disability, that it doesn't set me behind, it sets me apart, and really like fully stepping into that and like really knowing what that power feels like and what the impact I have and how I can, impact others and be able to be a part of that. I think my stamp, I want to use my voice as much as I can. I want to advocate for people. I want to share my story. I want just to create change on so many levels. Like I want to like break tables and shatter glass ceilings. Like I am just in this space of where I kind of just want to professionally like shake things up. And so just continuing to do that. I think right now I'm in this transition with looking for another job and all of that, and just being okay with pivoting, being okay with seeing what other options are out there and what other ways I can be involved within OMP that may be outside of clinical care, and just to be open to that. But it's been a process. It's been some emotions, a lot of ups and downs, but just really harnessing the power of who I am and knowing that I'm worthy, knowing that I deserve to speak on a panel, or knowing that I deserve to be in a room full of people where it might not be that many people that look like me, and that there's just so much value in that. So my donut place. So there's a place called Sublime that's in Atlanta. I love them. They have donut ice cream sandwiches. Another donut I like is red velvet. I like that one. And then Chicago, because I was there for graduate school, there's a place called Do Right Donuts. They have a donut chicken sandwich, and it sounds like a lot. It sounds, because I feel like a donut burger is too much, but a donut chicken sandwich, I was like, okay, I could do this, but it's so good. And you can get it with bacon and cheese on it. Like, I miss that place, but
God bless America. Only you get a donut, chicken sandwich with cheese.
And bacon.
Absolutely love it. All right. To everyone watching this, thank you for joining us. Thank you for watching our panel. Thank you for listening to our stories. And we hope it touched each and every one of you. One of the things when it comes to those who are differently able is we always make assumptions, like I started off with using the handicap sign. But when you dive deeper, you can learn something new. You can find a wealth of knowledge you may have never known. I don't think anybody logged into this, maybe besides Stacy, and thought they were going to get multiple donut recommendations. But that's the power of life. When you go into something wholeheartedly, when you open yourself, you can see that there are multiple layers to everything. So disabilities does not have to equal not fun or only healthy eating or anything else like that. You too can go out there, take your disability, go to school, go to residency, and if you want to have a donut chicken sandwich with bacon and cheese. I need to try that now. For all of us, we thank you for joining us. I know this has opened my eyes. I am definitely going to look into discussing some things with the accommodations office at the college that I work with from time to time, because I think these topics are very important. And as Mia said, education as a whole, especially medical education, needs some change. You know, a lot of people in med school just got their step 1 scores from a score to pass fail, but there are other things that need to be done as well. So thank you for joining us. I'll pass it on to Mandy to lead us with any parting thoughts. And before I do that, I have to again hype up the Tour for Diversity in Medicine. That is the organization I work with. And as I stated earlier, diversity is in many ways. It can be look, it can be disabilities, it can be speech, it can be anything. We're on all social platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We're not on TikTok. You can't really like do the mentorship thing via TikTok videos, but we're on everything else.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you so much. Thank you to the folks that were able to hang with us past the top of the hour to continue to answer questions. This has been such an amazing session. I am so thankful for all of you guys. I just want to say we've got one more webinar tonight, actually hosted. Dr. Anani, I think you're on it, aren't you, at 8 o'clock? Yeah,
I am.
So yes, we want more Dr. Anani and the 8 o'clock hour with the Tour for Diversity. We're going to be diving into another topic that touches all of us, gun violence, and what the physician response is to this public health crisis. So want to encourage everybody to log into that one in just a little bit. So we'll also see you all at the career fair tomorrow night. So these are all fair questions that you guys in the panel can come, or in the audience can come to our career fair tomorrow night and start asking these questions and have conversations about, you know, what your path looks like, because everybody's journey is unique, and that's what HPW is here to promote. So thank you, everyone. I appreciate it. I wish you all a wonderful evening.